All right, so we've got Paul Hutchinson. He's the first investor in the Sound of Freedom. Paul, I got to ask you, what was your expectation when you invested in the Sound of Freedom? A, how much did you invest in Sound of Freedom, and what was your expected return?
Well, I'll answer that with why I decided to put some money in. If you watch the movie halfway through, when the Homeland Security agent's like, the only way that I can make this work with this rescue is I've got to convince Pablo. Well, I'm Pablo. Eduardo Verástegui, who's the producer of the film, he plays me in that movie. And I got a phone call 10 years ago that changed my life, absolutely changed everything. I was a successful investor, successful real estate mogul with a fund that we had built. And that one phone call in helping me see, not just to fund the rescue of those kids, but to physically be there and see that in first person, changed everything. And I knew that 99.9% of the world had no idea that was going on. No idea. And so, yes, you can say on the outside, this is a surprise, but it really isn't, because the only reason why we decided to make this movie, why I decided to invest, is to create a movement. And you can't create a movement with 10 or 20 people watching the film. You're only going to create a movement if you create something that's so amazing that every single person that watches it tells everybody they know that they need to watch it. And so that was the purpose. And in the beginning, Mark, we went to Sony and Lionsgate and Paramount because we had this amazing story, this true story of what ended up being the rescue of over 120 victims. It was the largest child rescue mission that I knew of in history at the time. It was a powerful story. And we took that story and a number of other rescue missions and put them together in the script. And this amazing story, we went to the big guys with Sony and Lionsgate and Paramount and all these guys. And they were interested, but they wanted to change the story. They wanted to have full control of being able to do whatever they wanted. I mean, they could have put one of our operators in a situation where he was touching a child or whatever. They could have tabled the entire thing for 20 years and never done anything with it. And that wasn't what we were interested in. We wanted to take this message to the world. And so we said, you know what, the only way we're going to do that is we've got to fund it privately. And so I committed the first money in. I was the first $600,000 in, which was what it took to write the script and get it completely ready to start filming. And at that point, we brought in some other wealthy families between myself and the Carlos Slim family and the Walton family and the DiGiorio family that did Paul Mitchell. Those were the primary early investors. And then we looked far and wide to find the very best team to bring this message to the world. And I saw some films that were done by Alejandro Monteverde and Eduardo Verástegui. Eduardo plays me. I thought, you know what, these guys have the right heart. And so we brought them on, and the film was finished 5 years ago. And once it was finished, I'm like, okay, we have this amazing film. Now let's take it to the world. And we went out with all of these different distributors. And Mark, we were shut off every single time. We had guys that would put it under contract for like 6 months, telling us that they were going to put $20 million into it to distribution. And then boom, crickets, nothing after the 6 months was gone. I'm like, crap, am I the only one that thinks this is a good movie? Did the public really not want this? Is that why the distributors didn't want to do it? And so the only way that this film could come to the world is a complete disruption of the system that we know right now. And the system that we know is controlling everything that's coming into your home. Disney, big media, the Hollywood, even mainstream media is controlling what's coming into your mind, it's mass psychosis that we have no control over. So we had to bring this to the people by the people. And that was the program that we did with Angel Studios.
So this disruption is so massive that I think that's probably the reason why you had so much trouble putting it out there, and why we need more of these kind of like crowdfunded type of opportunities out there. I mean, it's amazing to me how every single industry at every single level is being disrupted, and media totally being overtaken by that. But I just want to contextualize this a little bit, right? Which, by the way, who was it? Eduardo Vrosky that played you in the movie? Super handsome dude. You have some very, you must be very secure with yourself to let someone that handsome play you in a movie. You know what I
mean? my personal assistant, when we brought him on, she swooned. She's like, he is gorgeous. And I'm like, I couldn't find some ugly dude to play me. I mean, what?
I don't think I'd let my wife watch it. I'd be like, wife, don't, no, you'll never look at me the same. Kidding aside, though, at the beginning of this thing, like you're in the middle of running a $40 billion company. You co-founded Bridge Investment Group. Like you're in the middle of it, right? Like what was your day-to-day life looking like before you decided to make this movement with The Sound of Freedom?
Well, I was the co-founder of Bridge. I had sold a company at 29 years old, did really well on the sale, started investing in real estate, realized that if I didn't hire a guy smarter than me, I was going to lose all my money in real estate, and put together a team, John Pennington and I, co-founders, and build it. We built it big. I mean, it took us a whole year to raise $2 million. And 5 years later, we were at $100 million. And 5 years later, we were at $1 billion. And I was connecting with the wealthiest families in the world. I was flying all around the world because one share in my fund was $1 million. And you had to have at least a $5 million net worth for us to even talk to you about it. And most of them were $50 to $100 million net worth. So they were big players. And from a charity standpoint, I really believe that my success as an entrepreneur was directly tied to a decision I made in my early 20s that a large percentage, not 2 or 5%, but up to 20% of my money and 20% of my time would go to charity, making a significant impact in the lives of other people. And you can call it karma, you can call it God, you can call it the universe, you can call it whatever you want to. There's a higher power very interested in us doing good. And for me in my life, boom, I had massive success in my business goals directly tied to my decision to be charitable and make a difference there. And so I was on some different charity boards, raising money for the fund full time. And I got a call from the Attorney General that said, Paul, I need to talk to you about something that's pretty dark. I'm like, well, what's dark? There's a lot of dark things. He goes, oh, this is really dark. He says, this is the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world. And good people don't even know that it's happened. He said, it's human trafficking. In this case, specifically, child trafficking. He said there's a Homeland Security agent who has identified some children in Colombia and needs some help financially. And he said, you're the best connected financially of anybody I know. You've got these relationships with all these ultra wealthy families. And that's where things started, is being able to put my money and others into helping with that rescue. And then being brought in firsthand changed everything.
And that was your first undercover. What did you think when Tim goes to you and he says, yeah, by the way, Paul, you're going to actually need to be the talent on this one. What were you thinking when he asked you to come undercover with him?
I was in Atlanta, Georgia. I was at a conference. I was raising money. I was meeting with a bunch of ultra high net worth people there. And I get a phone call. I had already talked to Tim and seen some of the stuff he was doing and helped introduce him to some wealthy donors. And he called me up and he said, Paul, he said, I'm here in Cartagena, Colombia. There's not just 20 children here. There's more than 50 and there's more than 100 in the surrounding areas that we believe we can rescue all 100 children at the same time. But I need your help. And I said, well, how much do you need? I thought he needed a check. He said, I need you. Can you be in Colombia in 2 days? He said, I have to have somebody who can effectively negotiate a multi-million-dollar real estate deal with the traffickers. He said, I can't teach my Navy SEALs how to do it. These guys will see through fake money all day long and somebody will get shot. He said, and he knew more about my background than most people. I have a special set of skills from a previous life that makes me somewhat safe in a dangerous place, but he needed somebody who could sit there and look at this project. That the head trafficker had a piece of property he wanted to develop into a child brothel sex resort. He needed a few $1 million to do it. He believed he could make tens of millions of dollars a year on this project. And he had connections with the other traffickers. Somehow we needed to get him to call all the other traffickers, get them to bring all their children to the same place. And if he did, then I would fund his project for him. So 2 days later, I'm in Cartagena, Colombia. I'm face to face with the most evil people on the planet, negotiated this deal. And you can see the rest in The Sound of Freedom. And I've since that time led 70 undercover rescue missions in 15 countries, including, in Haiti, going in dressed as a doctor. There's a whole bunch of things that were included in that film that were subsequent rescue missions that we brought all in there together.
Yeah, I guess what I take from that is, at a certain point, another dollar doesn't change you, but it's impacting lives, right? It's unbelievable.
I had a poster in my room when I was a kid that had a whole bunch of Lamborghinis and Ferraris and a nice house. And I had a sign that said, "He who has the most toys wins." Today, I have one that says, "He who has a powerful, positive impact in the most lives wins." And that's there's only so many cars you can have. At one point, I had 57 vehicles that I had to worry about renewals. Most of them I never drove. Other people freaking drove them, right? It's retarded. And so you get to a point where what's life really about? And why was I given this degree of success and talents, et cetera? Well, I believe so that we can make a difference in the lives of others.
Yeah, it definitely fills my cup, although you got to pay bills too at the same time. And listen, ladies and gentlemen, I promise you we're going to get back on track to the founding of the Sound of Freedom, but I have another curiosity question that I think this is a good place to bring in. And that's on the idea of tithing. I'm a Christian, I go to church, and I have this kind of belief in my mind that, well, once I make enough money in all this other stuff's good, then I'll start tithing. Right? Or once I start making more money, then I'll invest in this other thing. But it strikes me that, if you're going to tithe, you just need to start tithing. Do you have any hot takes on tithing, Paul?
I've got a huge hot take there. So this is super important. So in Malachi, it talks about, if prove me now herewith. It's talking about tithing. And it says, and God saying, "Prove me now herewith, I will not open the windows of heaven, that there will not be room enough to receive it." Right? I live by that. That's one of the few things where a very specific law is given a very specific reward. Right? A lot of other ones are somewhat ambiguous. And I don't even know the word there, but that one's very specific. And in most churches, they say 10%. Mark, the average person in terms of total charity, not just to their church, but total charity, average person does less than 2%. In fact, what makes me sick is that people that are multimillionaires and billionaires typically give less than that. There's a smaller percentage, which is just retarded. So I had a mentor in my early 20s, and he said, "Paul, if you make a decision today that it's not 5% or 10%, it's upwards of 20% of your time and your money," he said, you'll have massive success. And he said, it's a universal law. This isn't a Christian law. This isn't a Buddhist law. This isn't a Muslim law. This is a universal law of this energy of exchange, where you're giving and helping in a way that's truly making a difference, and those things would come back. And this is back when I was earning $2,000 a month. And so many people are like, "Oh, when I get rich, then I'm going to give." No, you give now and then you'll get rich. I'm telling you, it works. I'm telling you, it works. You give now when you're broke, and you'll have a lot higher chance of getting rich. You've got to exercise that faith, though, that's why you're doing it. You don't want to just be a Mother Teresa and be totally broke and give it all away. No, give it with the intention. And it's okay. It's okay to have that intention, saying, "You know what? I'm going to give because I expect that the universe, that God's going to return in massive numbers. And I'm making $2,000 a month when I'm in my early 20s. 20% of that, crap, that was like $400, right? Now I'm living on $1,600. That sucks. But by making that decision when I was broke, you look at my life. I'm not that smart, right? How does somebody become a partner, let alone a founder of a $48 billion real estate fund? Were you not a University of Utah dropout, right? The statistical probability of me being where I am is 0. The only way you get there is you go to Harvard, you get a JD MBA, you start at the bottom, you go to New York, and 20 years later, you kiss on butt. Finally, you get to the place where you're maybe a partner. To become a founder of something like this, it doesn't exist. The only way I can understand it is that I made that decision when I was broke, when I'm earning $2,000 a month, that I was going to dedicate a large percentage of my time and money to charity, to making a difference in the world. So find something you're passionate about. Saving the trees, saving the whales, saving the kids, whatever. Find something you're passionate about and make a significant difference in that arena, and your business life will explode.
It's that classic adage of the more you give, the more you receive. When you're in it, it doesn't really feel like it, but you're right. Obviously I haven't had the massive success that you had yet. I'm coming for you, Paul. Watch out.
Nice.
But I do find the more time I'm spending doing good things, doing selfless things, it's like, wow, good stuff just happens back to me. It's kind of weird how that law of reciprocity works out. Exactly. All right, cool. So now we moved past the tithing. I had to ask that because I've been thinking about that, but I want to get back to this point here where you've got the movie, you've put in your own $600K Sound of Freedom to get it rolling, but you're having a hard time getting it picked up by a movie studio, right? So walk me through where you're at this point. You've got the script is written at this point.
You're right, and in addition to the 600, just so you know, I'm an executive producer, and I own a significant percentage of the producer shares. I bought out some of the earlier producers, so you've got the actual producer and the director and Tim and myself, but I ended up buying a couple other people out. So there was a lot more that was put in the beginning besides that original investment amount. So fast forward.
Paul, is that because you had so much faith that this movie was going to be huge and get your money back? Or is it because you felt really good about where the project was headed?
It was never about the return on the money for me with this.
Okay.
It was about my belief in this project making an impact. And if there were people on the team who didn't feel that like I did, that weren't as excited about where it was going, then from an energetic standpoint, it's kind of that collaboration of faith type of a thing, right? If you got 3 business partners and 2 of you absolutely believe where you're going and your energy and focus and faith is there, and you've got one who may be working just as hard as you guys, but the belief factor isn't there, he doesn't feel it like you do, that energy itself needs to be removed in order for you to really transform and move forward, right? And so if there was anybody on board that was not 100% focused on where we were going, I knew that would slow things down. And so we bought out some earlier investors, and even when Fox International had put some money in the beginning and had international distribution rights, and then when Disney bought them out, Disney didn't want to have anything to do with this from a distribution standpoint or anything. And that by itself was a negative anchor that was keeping us from flying, right? So they had to be bought out. All of those guys that didn't see the vision had to be bought out. Once that was all done, then we could really take off. I think that stuff like this, you said you're Christian, so I'm just going to go there, is God is not interested in somebody who has that kind of an attitude making the money and the returns. He wants to make sure that everybody is on the same bus, moving the same direction, and has that same vision of what we can do with it. And so fast forward, we finally got them out of the picture, and we
Disney
went
out of the picture, or the producers. Where are we at? Who do we get out of the picture? Disney and all.
Disney. Yeah.
My understanding, they were Angel Studios was tied up in like a legal deal with Disney in California for months. No.
Yeah. It was a whole different issue there, but yeah, Angel's been fighting for light and good for a long time, and they started out with this program that you could take movies that you really want to watch with your kids, but maybe it's got sex in there, maybe it's got drugs in there, maybe it's got violence in there. And they had this system that would edit that out. So you could sit and watch all your favorite movies, bring your kids in, and not have all of that crap being brought into your home. And that was the first time that I realized that the cynical nature of big Hollywood, when they threw this massive fit and they issued this massive lawsuit. Really, it was not Angel Studios that was changing the film. It was Angel Studios giving good people like you and I the ability to censor that stuff out. But big Hollywood didn't want it censored. Why? Yeah, that's what you have to ask yourself. Why did they not want to have you have the ability to censor that stuff in your own home? It's because they had an agenda for a long time of the crap they wanted to feed you, of the desensitization of you and your children, so that you guys could grow up and everybody decides that your third graders can end up having sex change operations in school. All of this crap has been slowly fed to us. 30 years ago, our parents, there's no way they would have taken a look at all of the crap that we're being shown by Hollywood today. It would make them sick. They're like, no, this is not what I'm teaching my kids. And so we have to pay close attention to what Hollywood is feeding us and what big media is feeding us, what our social media is feeding us, because that's what's created the problem. You know, people ask, okay, Paul, how are you going to eradicate child trafficking? Well, there's a bigger picture behind all of this. And that's what liberating humanity is all about. We've got to change that negative view that we have of each other, of ourselves, of God, etc., in order for us to stop this problem. Child trafficking is growing faster than it ever has. Why is it? Why is somebody attracted to a 12-year-old, right? Well, it starts out with the crap that you're seeing on most of your movies, where they're taking sex and taking away the divinity of it, and they're making it so that all kinds of crazy things on our sex life is seemingly okay because of the stuff we're seeing on the media. That's what's feeding this. And we saw it firsthand with what happened with Angel Studios and Hollywood and that big fight there. And now today it's like, you know what? We'll show you. There's still enough good people in this world that are going to get behind this movie, get behind this movement, where we can get around all of you who are trying to censor us, who are trying to feed us all the crap.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons why The Sound of Freedom is maybe one of the most impactful movies in the last 20, 30 years, right? I feel like, not only does it change the awareness of this horrible industry, this $150 billion child trafficking industry, human trafficking industry, but it's exposed a gaping wound in the old gatekeeper Hollywood model. Like Hollywood or don't like them, they're the gatekeepers. 20 years ago, you're not getting a movie made without a major movie studio. And nowadays, like I heard Eduardo talking about, he was just going to release it on YouTube because he couldn't get a studio to produce it.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting that this model's been proven out. And I think, listen, a lot of people, we want money. We want to invest money and something's going to give us a return. So when we see, hey, I can put in 12 grand or 12 million, get back 166 million, like that, those numbers start to look better, They start to look better.
Yeah.
So let me back it up a little bit. I'm getting a little bit ahead of here. So what did it take really to get this movie over the hump? It was finished 5 years ago. You were getting put off in all these different ways. What was like the shining moment? How did you actually get the idea and the model to get this thing across the finish line?
I was depressed about the whole thing. We tried for a number of years and it was kind of dead for a while. And it wasn't my idea to bring it into Angel. I wish it was. I wish I could say, hey, that was my brilliant idea. It wasn't. Tim actually went in. He had some friends that were there and brought it into him and said, hey, I think this is something that might fit your model. And so they picked that up and blossomed in such an amazing way with the beat. Now, I had watched some of the other things that they had done. I was one of their early adopters of their editing software. The TV series The Chosen is just fantastic, and in how they approached that story with the life of Jesus, beautifully done. But them coming out, and what's interesting, we thought that they'd come out with it sometime later this year. They're like, no, we're going to hit it hard and fast and come out July 4th. And so they put all of that together in just a matter of a couple months with the audience that they already had getting behind it.
Yeah, I think they retained the rights in March, and then they released it in July, just a few months later. That's crazy to me. What do you think? So here's another question, right? What do you think about this crowdsourcing model, the pay it forward model? At the end of the movie, Jim Caviezel comes on the screen and says, "Hey, by the way, you can donate $5, $10, $100, whatever, so the next person can watch the movie." A lot of I've heard critics saying like, "Oh, that's bad. Those are fake sales. Those aren't real movie tickets being sold." But it's still revenue for the movie. So what do you think about this crowdsourcing pay it forward model?
Those guys can talk crap all they want to. The theaters are full. They're full. And people stand up and clap at the end every time. And so, there's plenty of critics out there. They're going to talk crap. The good thing is there are plenty of people out there who can't afford it, that we pass that, pay that forward. They go see it. And I love the model because every person that sees it tells somebody about it. So if we pay for people to go see it for free, they're going to tell their friends, and some of their friends are going to pay for more. So it's going to continue moving forward. And that's how The Chosen got pushed out, is that very same pay it forward model. And people like myself with The Chosen, every time I watched one of their episodes, I bought a whole bunch of free passes for other people because I saw the value of what it could bring to their lives. Now, I don't know that model would work with, some Mission Impossible movie or whatever else. It wouldn't. But something that's going to make a significant impact in the lives of your family and your friends, you're going to want to pay that forward. And that's why the model works here.
But, agreed. I guess the question here is, well, how do you replicate it for a Mission Impossible type of movie, right? Because you still have the gatekeepers out there that are saying, hey, unless you have this level of ESG score, or unless you have this, this worldview allocated, then the movie, we can't produce it. We're not going to green light it. You know what I mean? So it's basically so this is interesting. What's happened is you've got 45% of the American population that has this worldview, and the other 45% have this worldview. And so those markets must be met. There is a demand there. So how do you continue to supply it if you can't go the traditional Hollywood route?
Well, I think that the key is continuing to produce movies like this that are making a difference. And I think that you'll be able to continue with that model of paying it forward. The pure entertainment value stuff that, explosions and lots of action or love stories and lots of sex, whatever it is, the money will follow that just because people want to be entertained. But something like this, that's more than entertainment, it's making a difference, it's creating a movement. This is the kind of thing that would work and will continue to work in this kind of a model.
Yeah,
because people are sick of it. They're sick of all the crap. They want to have good entertainment. They want to have things that are going to make them think, make them cry, make them stand up and make a difference. And they're not seeing it. It's been too long since they've had this kind of movie come out. So that's why they're willing to pass it forward.
It's like, why does politics have to be a part of I can't just watch a football game without getting politics. Come the hell on. We're over the politics, y'all. Bring us something that's fresh, has good story, good message, solid value. It's not that complicated. When we start talking about all those giant explosions and stuff like that, I think probably one of the biggest challenges previously was, well, that takes a lot of money, right? But I don't know if you've been looking at this, but AI is pretty freaking ridiculous. And I think we're very close to having completely AI generated movies. I don't know if you know something that I don't, but why would I hire the pyrotechnics and the staff and all these giant effects when I can just type it into an algorithm and AI will give me a beautifully rendered video right there?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and half of these movies, Indiana Jones was almost $300 million to produce that film. $300 million. And we spent 14.5.
You're going to be able to make that with $1 million in 5 years because it's just CGI, AI animate the entire thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
that's when you're going to see the Hollywood strike for real. You're going to see that's going to be the real Hollywood strike. Here trying to argue over we want no AI in writing. I don't think you're going to be able to stop that tidal wave. I don't know. Speaking of tidal waves, though, I definitely want to talk about your mission now, which is disrupting the child sex trade, human trafficking. You got liberatedchildren.org, liberatechildren.org. And you have this idea of disrupt. I don't see, I'm watching the movie and I'm like, okay, they just saved 100 kids. Like, holy crap, that's amazing. But there's like 100 million more out there. So what's the model? What's the plan to disrupt the $150 billion human trafficking market?
Here's where I'm coming from. In the last 10 years, those 70 undercover rescue missions, I really thought I was making an impact. In fact, 10 years ago, and there's statistics all over of how many children are in slavery. Bottom line is there are more children being sold today than there was 10 years ago. So if my goal was to eradicate child trafficking, if I made that commitment when I was on that first rescue and that little girl, they call her Rocio in the movie, Princess is what the traffickers called her. She was standing there in front of me, scared to death, shaking. And I made a commitment to myself, to God, and to that child that I would do everything in my power to eradicate child trafficking from the face of the earth. I just couldn't believe there was something that evil. And so I put massive amounts of resources and massive amounts of my time and even putting my life in risk in doing these undercover missions and bringing together teams. And I realized the end of last year that there's more today than there ever has been. And I realized that every single time we went in and pulled 20 children out of hell, that there was a vacuum because there was still a demand and 20 more children were being sucked into it. And so the only way that we were going to fix this is we had to fix the demand. Now, from a demand standpoint, you say, okay, well, let's just go arrest every pedophile. Yeah, that's the thing. Let's put them all in prison. There was 800,000 unique individuals last month that downloaded child rape videos in the US, right? And that's just what one of our pieces of software identified. 800,000. Now these are unique individuals that were just picked up by a piece of software from one of our sister companies that these guys think that they're anonymous in the dark web. The problem is massive. It is massive. And so somebody doesn't just grow up and decide they want to go to Colombia and have sex with a child. There's a lot of other things that are on the way. In fact, people ask me, Paul, how can you go face to face with somebody selling a child and not have them see the anger and the hatred in your eyes? And my answer surprises them and it pisses some of them off. Here's what it is. There's a part of me that has compassion for them. Well, how can you have compassion? They're selling you a child. No, I will do everything in my power to ensure they never hurt another child again. But what I wish more than anything is that I had a time machine and I could go back 5 years, 10 years, 20 years before they ever pass that trauma on to a child and figured out what in the world was going on in their life. They got them to the point where they thought that was okay. Most of them were raped themselves as children. Most of them had 1,000 bad things that happened to them and 1,000 bad decisions that got them to that point. Now, that doesn't justify their actions. But what it does tell us is that since we don't have a time machine, there are hundreds of millions of people on Earth today who are teenagers, young adults that don't have kids of their own, that have never hurt a child like that sometime in their life will become that Uncle Harry, right? That will be doing those things. So can we take them at that state and say, okay, yes, you were abused as a child. Yes, you had these issues. Yes, you've got this, you're a bully, you have low, whatever it is, and help them shed that and come to a place of light and truth and love. Come to a place where they can not define themselves by the things that happen to them. Come to a place where they will never pass their own trauma on to somebody else. If we can do that, we will save millions and millions of children. And it's not just the ones who are being trafficked. It's the ones in your own home. And this is something that everybody needs to hear that's listening right now. people come away from the movie and they say, okay, what I'm going to do something. I'm going to write a check to the Child Liberation Foundation, right? I want to send some Navy SEALs down to go rescue these kids. Yes, that we've got Navy SEALs that are doing that right now. But the most important thing that you can do is hug your children. People say, well, how's that going to help? Well, because the majority of children that are trafficked come from broken homes, come from the foster program, come from runaways, come from children that have low self-esteem because they don't have a healthy home environment. So they're perfect victims for these traffickers to pick up. But it's not just the traffickers. 1 out of every 4 women that you know right now, 1 out of every 4 have been a victim of sexual violence as a child. As a child, 1 out of every 4 women were abused as a child in some way, most of them in their own homes. And the average age of somebody talking about it is 52 years old. Men, it's a little bit less. It's 1 out of every 5, 20% at some time in their life. But even them, 1/4 of them, literally 200 million men in this world who was under the age of 10 years old in their own homes. And they're holding on to this trauma. And they don't tell it to anybody because they're afraid that it'll make them look small or whatever else. But if they can share that and release that trauma and get rid of it before it festers and comes out in anger issues or physical abuse or even some cases sexual abuse of others, then we can heal and move forward to the point where that trauma is never passed on to somebody else. That's how we liberate humanity. That's how we eradicate child trafficking, is by helping people heal before their trauma is ever passed on to somebody else.
Man, some of those numbers are shocking, and I'm a little speechless here. So I was talking, my wife and I we have a marriage counselor, therapist, whatever you want to call them. I know everyone's got a perfect marriage, so don't judge me. But
everybody needs marriage counselors.
Literally 100%. This is something even if you think that you're good, you should still have someone, because you need a third party. You need a third party to come in and tell your wife when she's wrong, because you can't tell your wife when she's wrong. But if you bring in a third party,
exactly.
Anyway, he brought up this idea of radical transparency, and basically just tell your partner your deepest, darkest secrets. And if they can love you for that, then they can love you for anything. I could say that it is really hard to share that with anyone, which is essentially what you're trying to get these young men and women to do, is to say, hey, I was sexually assaulted as a kid, and this is how it's impacted. I can't imagine, I'm blessed that I didn't have that problem. I can't imagine anyone ever wanting to share that deepest, darkest secret. How do you actually how can you create a place where that can actually happen?
We have to let people know that it's okay. What's so crazy is that I know men who were raped by their uncle when they were 8. They never said anything to anybody, yet they spend their entire adolescence and young adult years sleeping with every woman they possibly could to prove to themselves that they weren't gay. Crazy stuff, right? Because they didn't know why that felt good when they were that age and whatnot. And so many people, they feel dirty because of things that happened to them. Are you kidding me? There was nothing that you did wrong as a child that brought that on. There is no fault of yours whatsoever. And you are no less of a man today because that happened or because you shared it. And once you understand that 1 out of every 5 men has been a victim of sexual violence at some point, then you'll realize that you're not such an odd man out. That in reality, there are other people who have dealt with that, and they are wonderful men and women today. That they have come forward. In fact, 2 out of every 3 people who have dealt with that kind of abuse as a child, 2 out of every 3 end up growing up being a fierce protector of children and never letting that trauma pass on. Unfortunately, 1/3 of people who have experienced that as a child end up becoming contact offenders and passing that trauma on to others. And so if we can make it okay to talk about it, if we can make it okay to come together with with groups that can help each other heal, if we can provide tools to help people heal, and we can go down that road as a little separate thing. I've identified some things that can do 10 and 20 years of therapy within 24 to 48 hours. And we're working on some laws to legalize all of this in the US because they're so powerful and so effective at helping people release that trauma from their childhood.
Well, you certainly get involved at liberatetechildren.org. Man, definitely changing the world here. Before I let you go, I want to ask if there's any specific policy you think that could help, like legislatively, because some of this stuff, maybe call me pessimistic, trying to convince people like it's okay to share your deepest, darkest secret with people. Tough sell. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it. I actually agree with Paul. I think that you should, but trying to convince people to do that is a tough sell. One of the problems I think that we have in the United States right now is we have a lot of incentive structures that don't make any sense. And so I'm wondering if there's any policies we could help.
I will absolutely go there. You may or may not agree with it because we've been told our whole life that this stuff is evil. And what I'm meaning by this stuff is in the late 60s, the US government threw under the bus a whole group of plant medicines and classified them as Schedule I drugs with cocaine and meth and everything else. What I'm talking about is psychedelics. So Johns Hopkins University did a study on people who have dealt with trauma at some time in their life and 10 and 20 years worth of therapy not working through it. And in one session, 24 hours of a guided meditation, plant medicine healing experience, say it was 76% of them said it was the number one most transformational 24 hours of their life. 100% of them said it was within the top 5 most transformational experiences of their life, which is powerful. Now, here's what's crazy. We've been told this, oh, no, that's super bad for you, super bad, whatever else. Psilocybin is safer than table sugar. Okay, now you don't want to drive while you're on it, right? But it's safer than table sugar. No cases of addiction, no cases of overdose. So why? Why did it all get thrown under the bus in the late 60s and classified as a Schedule I? This is the most powerful. So we have some healing retreats in Latin America where we bring people in. We've brought men and women together who have dealt with all kinds of childhood trauma, et cetera, or issues in their life that are really negatively affecting them. And in 24 to 48 hours, come away completely transformed. In fact, we have a couple doctors in Peru that have an 85% success rate in helping people completely get off of cocaine or heroin who are massively addicted and couldn't get off. 85% success rate with 0 relapses. Nothing, right? That's super powerful, right? So there's these amazing tools that are in place. We've helped to decriminalize them in Oregon, in Colorado, parts of California. Utah was going to be the first state to fully legalize the use of psilocybin and others for the purpose of trauma healing within a controlled environment. But our bill got pushed off just a little bit. I think that the FDA will approve at least MDMA this year and psilocybin next year. So those things, people need to get educated, because read the book, Change Your Mind, read the book, The Immortality Key, and you'll educate yourself and you'll come to an understanding that there are beautiful healing properties with using these, and there's no addiction. Yeah, it's just like an 8-hour experience with a trained facilitator, and you can release that stuff like 10 and 20 years worth of therapy can't do. So anyway, there's that. Sometimes I don't go deep on that, but I'll just, you asked what laws need to be changed. Those laws need to be changed, and people need to use those tools to shed their trauma so they never pass it on.
I am so glad you went there. I did not expect, I thought you were going to say something like, well, there's a problem with no fault divorce. And, there's this there. I thought you were going to go there. You're just going straight for, we need to be eating more mushrooms, people. You need to break out the mushrooms.
But the key is, there's people that use them just recreationally. These are so powerful that don't do that. Don't use them recreationally, because then your body doesn't. What you need to do is have a very focused intention coming into it with a facilitator who knows how to work through that kind of trauma therapy, etc. That's the times where you're going to have 75 to 100% of the people that are there saying it was the most transformational experience of their life, not just going on a wild trip and getting high, right? We're talking using these tools to reroute some of those negative habit patterns of thought, to regrow some of the dendrites, to reestablish things in your subconscious mind, so that in your conscious world you can deal with things a lot easier. You can not be so quick to anger, and be more patient with your wife, and be more understanding of each other, and be a better husband, father, etc. All of these things come into it with a very clear intention, with a facilitator, and it will be amazing the results that you get.
I've heard Huberman talk about this a little bit, Tim Ferriss, and you're not just a bunch of frat guys. You're actually trying to make a difference. So, let me put it this way. I will vote yes for decriminalizing it, because it makes sense. I've heard I think there's enough science. There's enough legitimate people. And you don't strike me as the kind of guy who'd be pushing that solution if you didn't really feel like there was something behind
absolutely not. I've got a missionary haircut, and I'm a businessman in a suit. I'm not the long-haired hippie that decides I'm going to go get high every other weekend. The only time that I use this is when I'm helping people work through their trauma.
Yeah. Super, super interesting. We've been talking with Paul Hutchinson, initial investor in the Sound of Freedom, co-founder of Bridge Investment Group, publicly traded company with over $48 billion in assets. No, not mushrooms, assets, $48 billion in assets with over 2,000 employees. Paul, thanks for joining us here today on the After Hours Entrepreneur. Where's the best place for us to find you?
You can find me all over social media. Just type in Liberating Humanity. In fact, as soon as you just type in Liberating, I'll be number one that comes up. But Liberating is actually liberating.humanity, or you can get lots of information to help your family in healing and in eradicating trafficking. You can go to liberating-humanity.com. And lots of great information at liberating-humanity.
And I'll say after my wife and I watched the Sound of Freedom movie, we had a little talk in our car about what she's like. Oh, what can I do? What can we do? Like, we want to do something. What can we do? And I said, I'm going to buy some movie tickets for someone. You don't need to upend your whole life and go undercover like Paul has done. Donate $5 or something. It doesn't need to be a lot, but money matters. Money matters. Yeah,
it does. Thank you, Mark. Yeah. And you can go to liberatechildren.org and find the Child Liberation Foundation.
God's children not for sale, as the saying goes. Paul, thank you, brother.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate your time.